Hi everybody, welcome to my next movie review. This actually, instead of it being just one movie review, is going to be 4 movie reviews all in one go. So if this movie review goes on a little bit long, that's why. Because I'm going to do 4 movie reviews all in one go. I actually got a 4-pack of movies, and they're all 4 of the Superman movies in the original, theatrical release version of the 4 movies. And I'm going to talk about each one individually here, and hopefully I won't go on too long about all of them. And I am going to do them in order, so just so you know. Of course, what you're looking at here is the trailer poster or the movie poster for the first Superman. Of course, the first Superman movie it's called either Superman or Superman the Movie, and it's a 1978 superhero film based on the DC Comics comic book of the same name, Superman. Richard Donner directed the film, which has, of course, the late Christopher Reeves as Superman, as well as Gene Hackman, Margot Kidder, Marlon Brando, Glenn Ford, Phyllis Thaxter, Jackie Cooper, Mark McClure, Valerie Perrine, and Ned Beatty. And the first Superman movie, this one, it talks about Superman's beginnings, starting as a baby as Kal-El of Krypton, and growing up in Smallville as the child of the Kents. He, of course, is known by Clark Kent here on Earth. And when he's, Clark Kent, Superman is, mild-mannered, and, meek as Moses kind of, attitude. And he, of course, lives in Metropolis, which is, of course, New York City in the theater, in the films. And Superman develops a romantic relationship with Lois Lane. Well, Superman is battling the villainous Lex Luthor, who's played in all 4 movies by Gene Hackman. This film was, according to Wikipedia, conceived in 1973 by Ilya Salkind. There was, one of those things where, according to Wikipedia, they decided back in the day to do both Superman and Superman 2 at the same time, film them together. The main the main shooting of the movies started in March of 1977 and ended in October of 1978. According to Wikipedia, this film's legacy helped create a reemergence of science fiction films and the establishment of the superhero film genre. One of my favorite actors is in this movie. It was the character of Jor-El on Krypton, played by, of course, Marlon Brando. But it, starts with Jor-El and, everybody on the planet Krypton. Starts there on Krypton. Well, it's, shows Jor-El leading a court case with the ruling council, with, sentencing 3 attempted insurrectionists, General Zod, Ursa, and Non, to eternal living death in the Phantom Zone. Of course, after, they, convict the 3 people, it changes to where they have a council meeting where Jor-El is trying to convince the council that Krypton, the planet, will soon blow up. In an attempt to save his infant son, Kal-El, Jor-El launches a spacecraft containing Kal-El towards Earth, a distant planet with, good atmosphere, and where Kal-El's dense molecular structure will give him superhuman powers. Shortly after Kal-El's spaceship is, sent into outer space, Krypton explodes. Yeah, and 3 years later, the ship lands near Smallville in America, somewhere here in America, where Kal-El is found by Jonathan and Martha Kent and raised as their own son, Clark. And of course, time passes, and he goes and works in the Daily Planet Metropolis, and it goes from there. And the movie's actually, it's pretty cute. But now on to Superman 2. Of course, the three people pictured here at the top are the three villains that were from the first movie. And of course, this is Superman 2, which is the 1980 sequel to Superman. And it stars, of course, Gene Hackman, Christopher Reeves, Terrence Stamp, Ned Beatty, Sarah Douglas, Margot Kidder, and Jack O'Halloran. It's, according to Wikipedia, the only Superman filmed by two directors. For this reason, according to Wikipedia, the film is surrounded with controversy since the original director, Richard Donner, had completed, by his estimation, roughly 75% of the movie in 1977 before Donner was taken off of the project. Many of the scenes shot by the second director, Richard Lester, who had been an uncredited producer in the first film, in 1979 are refilmed Donner sequences. It was released in Europe and Australia in late 1980 and other countries through 1981. But this movie, what ends up happening is the criminals, General Zod, Ursa, and Non, they pick up, they remind everybody that, the three of them were banished to the Phantom Zone by Jor-El in the first movie. And of course, many years after traveling through the galaxy, the Phantom Zone is shattered near Earth by the harmless detonation of a terrorist Hydra bomb in Paris from the Eiffel Tower, launched by Kal-El, now Superman. And of course, the three criminals become freed, finding themselves with the same superpowers that Superman has because of the sun, their son. And they, go crazy. General Zod, Ursa, and Non all do by, attacking people in and around East Houston, Idaho, and then Zod, Ursa, and Non all go to the White House, and they force the President of the United States to surrender, and everything. Of course, while all that's going on, Clark Kent and Lois Lane go to Niagara Falls, and Lois starts becoming suspicious that Clark Kent is Superman, and she tries to get her. Lois Lane tries to get Clark to admit that he's Superman, and Clark inadvertently reveals that he's Superman to Lois by doing some stuff in the hotel room, and they, of course, what ends up happening is Superman decides to turn human by becoming human by going in the red Kryptonian sunlight in a crystal chamber so that way he and Lois, can be closer, even though his mother Laura tells him not to. What ends up happening is Superman goes back to the Fortress of Solitude after he realizes that, the Zod, Ursa, and Non all have taken over the world, and the only person that can really stop them is him, and everything. Of course, Lex Luthor, who is, of course, played by Gene Hackman here. Of course, this is an older photo of him. Well, this is him much older than what he looks like in the movies. Has escaped from jail, found Superman's fortress before Superman and Lois get there. And Lex learns of Superman's connection to Jor-El and General Zod. Lex Luthor offers to lead Zod to Superman in exchange for control of Australia. And they try to, Lex with the three Kryptonians go to the Daily Planet, where they try to abduct Lois. Of course, Superman arrives after having found the green crystal and reversing the transformation process. And, a fight ensues. Zod, of course, realizes Superman cares for the innocent humans and takes advantage of this advantage by threatening bystanders. Of course, Superman flies off to figure out a way to get Zod and his minions to follow him to where Superman can defeat them at Superman's Fortress of Solitude. Of course, everything is just, all hunky-dory at the end of that movie, because it's, of course, Superman saves the day and everything. And, the scene where, at the beginning, where Lex Luthor escapes from jail, it's like the Village Idiots. They portray the guards as incompetent, and I'm like, oh, please. I don't think Lex Luthor would have been able to have farted crossways without them knowing in the prison what exactly had, of course, transpired. And, I'm like, please. And the whole hot air balloon thing was a bit, over the top in this movie. But, it was weird is at the end of the first movie, Lex Luthor pulls off his wig, and then in this movie he, has hair, and he's not bald, and it's like, oh, come on, make your mind up. Which way is it? Is he going to have hair? Is he going to be bald? Is he, which way is it going? That's pretty funny to see him, with hair. That's the way they showed him in the first movie, too. And, this is another pretty interesting, flick. But, now for the next movie, which is Superman 3. Of course, Superman 3 is the 1983 superhero film and the third in the Superman film series, based on the long-running DC Comics superhero. Christopher Reeves, Jackie Cooper, Mark McClure, and Margaret Kidder are now, of course, joined by Annette O'Toole, Annie Ross, Pamela Stevenson, Robert Vaughn, and Richard Pryor. I absolutely thought Richard Pryor was a trip in this movie. He is, or was, one of the funniest men to ever, do a movie. I mean, he is truly hysterical in this movie, even though he's not got a very large part. And this film, of course, Superman 3, was the last Reeves Superman film produced by Alexander Salkind and Eloia Salkind. It was followed by Supergirl, which was, of course, produced by the Second in 1984, and the non-Second produced sequel, Superman 4, Quest of Peace, in 1987. Superman 3 was, according to Wikipedia, less successful than the first two Superman movies, but financially and critically, the fifth highest grossing film of 1983. Of course, according to Wikipedia, the harsh criticism focused on the film's comedic and campy tone. Reeves was praised for its much darker performance as the corrupted Superman. This movie actually is where, and I'm going to try to explain this where it makes sense. In this movie, I forget exactly what happens, but somehow Superman splits himself in half, and like the really nice Superman turns away and is Clark Kent and is this good person, and then the evil Superman is like sitting around drinking and flicking beer nuts at like mirrors and busting them and everything. I don't remember that part. And it was just, and he's like nasty and dirty, and his costume is gross, and he looks like he needs a bath, and it's like you could almost smell him. It just was gross. To see him in this movie, you're like, ew. Of course, what ends up happening is Gus Gorman, played by Richard Pryor, is an unemployed ne'er-do-well, discovers a knack for computer programming. After embezzling from his new employer's payroll through a technique known as salami slicing, Gorman is brought to the attention of the CEO, Ross Webster. Webster, who's played by Robert Vaughn, is obsessed with the computer's potential to aid him in his schemes to rule the world financially. Joined by his sister Vera, who's played by Annie Ross, and his quote-unquote psychic nutritionist Lorelei Ambrosia, who's played by Pamela Stevenson, Webster blackmails Gorman into helping him. Meanwhile, Clark Kent is convinced his newspaper to allow him to return to Smallville for his high school reunion. En route as Superman, he extinguishes a fire in a chemical plant containing vials of acid that can produce clouds of corrosive vapor when superheated. Of course, when he gets back to Smallville, Clark is reunited with childhood friend Lana Lang, who's played by Annette O'Toole. Lana is a divorcee with a young son named Ricky, who's played by Paul Cathlitter. Clark and Lana begin to share affection for each other, although Lana's former boyfriend, Brad, played by Gavin O'Harley, Clark's childhood bully and now an alcoholic security guard, is still vying for her attention. Meanwhile, Webster schemes to monopolize the world's coffee crop. Infuriated by Columbus' refusal to do business with him, he orders Gorman to command an American weather satellite named Vulcan to create a hurricane to decimate the nation's coffee crop. Webster's scheme is thwarted when Superman neutralizes the tornado and saves the harvest. Webster then orders Gorman to use his computer knowledge to create kryptonite, remembering Lois Lane Daily Planet interview from Superman, during which Superman identified it as his only weakness. And Gus uses a computer to order Vulcan to locate Krypton's debris in outer space, but after the computer fails to analyze an unknown element in kryptonite, he improvises by replacing the unidentified element with tar garnered from a pack of cigarettes. And this goes on and on. Superman, of course, begins to question his own self-worth as the kryptonite takes effect. He becomes depressed, angry, and casually destructive, committing petty acts of vandalism such as blowing out the Olympic flame, straightening the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and ripping the hull of an oil tanker, causing the contents to spill into the sea. That one is actually very, very creepy. And the ending is even more bizarre. Of course, now, let's move on to Superman 4, which is the quest for peace. This is a 1987 superhero film. It's the last of the Superman theatrical movies starring Christopher Reeves as Superman. In this film, Superman battles Lex Luthor and his creation, the solar-powered evil clone of Superman called Nuclear Man. And unlike the last three movies, which were produced by the Southland family, the fourth movie was produced by Golan Globus Cannon Films, with association with Warner Brothers. Superman 4 was a lemon, and the series went on hiatus until Superman Returns in 2006. This just basically, talks about, Clark Kent going back to Smallville again, checking on the uninhabited farm where he grew up as a kid. In an empty barn, he finds the space capsule he was sent to Earth in and removes the green glowing Kryptonian energy module. A recording that was left by his birth mother, Laura, states that the power can only be used one time. Unwilling to sell the land to a mall developer, Superman returns to Metropolis and stops a runaway subway train. Returning to the Daily Planet as Clark Kent, he learns that the newspaper has been taken over by David Warfield, a tabloid tycoon who immediately fires Perry White and hires in his daughter Lucy, who's played by Muriel Hemingway, as the new editor. Lacey takes a shining to Clark and Lacey tries to seduce Clark. Clark agrees to go on a date with Lacey. And they talk about the U.S. and the Soviet Union going to nuclear war, and everything. And it's just, what ends up happening is Lois Lane tells Superman to go to the United Nations or the UN, and tell the United Nations people that Superman will rid the Earth of nuclear weapons. And then Superman gets a bunch of the nuclear weapons stockpile in a gigantic net in the Earth orbit, and then he hurls it into the sun. Of course, Lenny Luthor, who's played by John Cryer, escapes from jail and goes and sees his uncle Lex Luthor. Returning to Metropolis, the pair steal a strand of Superman's hair from a museum and create a genetic matrix which Lex attaches to an American nuclear missile. After the missile is test launched, Superman intercepts it and throws it into the sun. A glowing ball of energy is discharged, which develops into a superhuman, played by Mark Pillow. This quote-unquote nuclear man makes his way back to Earth to find his father, Luthor, who establishes that while his creation is powerful, he will deactivate if isolated from sunlight or light. This just keeps going on and on and on, and it's just, goofy movie. Of course, the worst part of watching these movies is knowing that Christopher Reeves, this is him before his 1995 accident, had his accident where he got tossed off a horse, and, unfortunately, it was on May 27th, 1995, he became a quadriplegic, and I've always felt so sorry, for him, because, he was a very gifted actor, and I liked him in the first three Superman movies. I always thought he was handsome, but anyway, That is the 4 movie reviews of Superman 1 through 4. I do want to thank you all for watching, and I hope you guys have a very great evening. Thank you for watching.